All right. This week's featured guest is Bevin Cohen from Small House Farm. Bevin is an award-winning author, herbalist, owner of Small House Farm, and host of the popular Seeds and Weeds podcast. Bevin offers workshops and lectures across the country on the benefits of living closer to the land through seeds, herbs, and locally grown food. He is a food and garden writer whose work has appeared in numerous publications, including Mother Earth News, Modern Farmer Magazine, and the Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company catalog. And Bevin is the author or editor of more than 10 books, including Saving Our Seeds and the Artisan Herbalist. Awesome. So let's welcome Bevin to the Let's Get Growing show. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Enoch. How are you doing today?
Really awesome to have you here on my show.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, we actually, I got to do Bevin's Seeds and Weeds podcast with him a few weeks back. That was a really fun experience. So I wanted to thank you for having me on your show as well.
Oh, man, I appreciate you being on the show. We got a ton of feedback about you. Everybody was so thrilled to have you there. You did it was a segment called Ask a Gardener, and folks had sent in their gardening questions for you to answer. People were thrilled with it. We might have to invite you back on the show, Enoch. People just loved having you there.
Awesome. That's really awesome to hear. Excellent. So, man, we've got so much to talk about. You've done so many great things in the gardening community. Again, as we've mentioned here in your bio, author, you've done all sorts of different books as well, too. In fact, I've got your From Our Seeds and Their Keepers book. I love this book, and it's one of the things that we're all about here on the Let's Get Growing show is kind of sharing garden stories and talking with different gardeners and getting their experiences from all over. And this book is just filled with some really great stories about seeds and seed saving and everything too. So really do enjoy this book. And again, I encourage anybody out there too to go check out some of the books that you have. Anything about that book in particular you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you even bringing it up. That was my very first book. It came out in 2018, and we have done a number of books since then, like you mentioned. But at the end of the day, I think that one's still my favorite. It was so much fun to work on. Because what it is, like you said, is just stories. It's about seeds and the people that keep them. Of course, when we save these seeds, we save these stories, and we want to pass those along as well. But the people that save the seeds also have stories to tell. So that was really what we were going for with that book, is to collect as many stories as we could and just put them in a place where they would be there forever. Because if we don't save and share the seeds and the stories, they could be lost. And we don't want that to happen. So that book, that was a blast. I
Yeah.
loved writing that book.
How about your first seed story, the Cherokee Trail of Tears Black Bean? How about share a little bit about that story with us?
Sure. That's the most sentimental seed for me out of them all, because it was the very first seed that I ever saved. Now, that story came to be, I was at a place here in Midland by me here in Michigan called the Chippewa Nature Center. And the Chippewa Nature Center has a heirloom garden where they grow different fruits and vegetables that would be somewhat historically accurate to what people would have grown in this area in the 1800s. And, this is well before we had Small House Farm or anything. I used to take my family there to visit on Homestead Sundays, and you could learn all sorts of different traditional skills. They'd be doing things like churning butter and working in the gardens and that sort of thing. And we'd come to visit, and I was just fascinated with the garden and all these old varieties that have these signs say, at the little wood burn sign, it'd say something like Bountiful Bush Bean, 1893 or whatever. And I'd be like, wow, what does this even mean? And the garden keeper explained to me one day, he says, these are heirloom seeds, Bevin. These are seeds that have been saved and passed down, and I was like, oh, that's really new to me. It's such a foreign concept. And he says, let me explain it to you in a different way. And he pulled some of those bean pods out of that vine and he stuck it in my hand. And he said, you take these seeds home, you grow them, save your seeds and share them with your friends. And that was the impetus for everything that's happened in my life. That moment in time literally changed my life when he handed those seeds to me. So that's something that I try to do for other people. sharing these seeds, getting the seeds into the, other people's hands so they could grow them and appreciate how wonderful it is to grow your own vegetables and to save those seeds and then to share that joy with everyone else.
Yeah, that was probably one of the cool things I liked about our previous interview there with Emmanuel is, he's a young man, he's out there learning and gaining all this great gardening experience and everything, and then setting off on his first young business adventure by, saving his own seeds and then, sharing those and passing those along with other people as well too.
I
So
was
really
so
good.
impressed with Emmanuel. I was sitting here backstage watching his interview. What a groovy guy. What a cool kid, man, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he's great. I really enjoy his show and his YouTube channel and everything. And again, too, one of those things we featured another young man last week as well, too, who works with his dad and putting together a garden. And it's just one of the things I like most is being able to share the kind of garden experience with younger folks and be able to get them encouraged along that sort of line to learn about growing and maintaining gardens and everything. It's really, when you see someone young who really gets it and gets that passion, it's just a real amazing thing.
It is. It's the most important thing, Enoch. I agree with that. You and I, we've only got so much time left here on Earth. It's getting those kids excited is the most important thing that we could do. Get them out there, get them planting those seeds. That's the future, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely the future. I did real quick, about your book, this one here though too. I wanted to share with everybody a really great quote that came from you out of the book. And when it comes to seeds, you said, "Within each seed is the miracle of life, the food that sustains us, our ancestors, and our cultures. Within each tiny bundle lies the history of our planet and its people. When we save our seeds, we save all of these things, and the simple act of sharing a seed from one hand to the next is surely one of the most significant and revolutionary acts of our time." That's just an amazing quote. When I read that, I was just like, wow, I was blown away. That is really what it's all about there for sure.
Well, absolutely. Not to sound too woo-woo, I suppose, but saving and sharing seeds is probably one of the most powerful things that we can do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. And I again, really, really enjoy the work that you do when it comes to that. And wanted to kind of take a step back a little bit here, though, too, into your past. And once you share with everybody what got you started in gardening.
Ooh. Well, so I was raised by my grandmother, and we lived in a little apartment on the edge
Yeah,
of town. So I didn't have a garden growing up, but we would grow excuse me, we would grow radishes. That was my big thing, was growing radishes in little flower
yeah,
pots. It was fascinating to me, and a radish is a great thing for a beginner gardener because they produce so quickly. It doesn't
yeah,
take long between seed to harvest, and kids, they don't have as much patience. So it was a nice fast paced vegetable for me. But also,
yeah.
I was one of those kids that loved eating radishes. So it was it's a perfect win-win. Loved growing those radishes. But we happened to be on the edge of town. So we were like right up against acres of forest. I was a kid. It seemed like it went on forever, right? And none of that
Yeah,
forest is even there anymore. It's all subdivisions and things. So the kids that live in those apartments now aren't as lucky as I was, I suppose. But I would spend my days wandering through the forest, enjoying all of the things that Mother Nature has to offer, listening to the birds and eating the berries and that sort of thing. And so at a young age, I was just infused with this fascination with everything that Mother Nature could do for us, the wonders of plants, and that's
yeah,
just something that stuck with me through my whole life. As I got older and I had an opportunity to have my own home, one of the first thing I tried to do was grow some tomatoes in a pot. You got to grow your own
yeah.
tomatoes. Nobody wants to grow them at the grocery store, or
That's
buy
right.
them at the grocery store. That's not good for nothing, right?
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
so, and as a beginner gardener years ago, well, I didn't do very well, right? As beginners with anything in life, we tend to fail more than anything.
Mhm.
But the more we fail, the more that we learn. And as long as we can just learn to persevere through that and accept those mistakes, which Mother Nature will teach us season after season, right? Every time we're out there, we have an
Yeah.
opportunity to learn something new. And it really has just snowballed out of control for me. What really, really sent it home for me as a lifelong gardener was when I had children.
Yeah.
to come back to talking about kids again. When I had that opportunity to take my oldest son, now today's his birthday, Elijah's
Oh, awesome.
birthday. Yep, he's 14 today. But when he was just a little guy, we'd take him out there and he would dig in the soil and that sort of thing. And there's just something magical about that. And
Yeah.
it just so that's it. This is all I want to do from now on. Find any excuse I can to get away from work and out into the garden.
That's right, for sure. So let's see. So I know you mentioned radishes there is one of the first things and all of that, but currently, what are some of the things that you really enjoy growing the most in your garden?
Oh man. Okay. So every year I tend to be obsessed with something new. For a long time it was corn. I was really just fascinated with growing corn. There's just something special about that. But we have limited space here, and corn takes up quite a bit of space, and it needs full
Yeah.
sun. And I have limited full sun areas as well, so we kind of had to make some cuts on some things. Last year I was all about Asian greens. Baker Creek Heirloom Seed, Jer, that owns Baker Creek, he's also fascinated with Asian fruits and vegetables. So
Yeah.
through their catalog, they offer a lot of different Asian greens. I bought them all last year, every single thing that they offered, and that's what I planted everywhere. And it was delicious and nutritious, and it was wonderful. This year, we're just starting to plant our seeds, and already I find myself completely obsessed with eggplants.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful varieties of eggplants. My buddy Mehmet, he owns Two Seeds in a Pod, Heirloom Seed Company, and he's from Turkey, and which is where a lot of eggplants were
Right.
domesticated and developed. And
Yeah.
so he has turned me on to some great ways to cook eggplants, roasting them over fire and all this sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And once you start to appreciate the flavors of something, you want to start growing it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I am pretty much obsessed with eggplants, all sorts of different shapes and sizes of them. I got already started. They're little guys right now, under lights on heat mats. But eggplants all the way this year, Enoch. That's what it's going to be about.
So yeah, so I guess that answers our what's new in the garden question. But I love growing eggplants as well. And again, I'm one of those people that, when I find something I like to grow, it doesn't matter necessarily if I enjoy them or not. So I might have to try some new ways of cooking and preparing eggplant. Maybe I can get some new ways of trying to enjoy it. It hasn't been one I've really cared for too much, but I love the plants so much. They're big, beautiful plants with these amazing leaves and just the way they grow. And then you get these really cool pods. I kind of find it similar to like pepper plants. That was my first real obsession, was pepper plants. And I like them because each of the plants and varieties have their own different temperaments to them, and they grow kind of differently. And you get some pods that'll grow straight up, you'll have some that grow down, you got all these sort of things. And the pods are just amazing, when you get all these different varieties of pods. And I find some similar fascination when it comes to eggplants and everything. So I've grown out a couple of varieties over the last couple of years, and I usually just give those to friends and family and people who really do enjoy them so that I can get the joy of actually growing them in my garden as well too. So I really love eggplants too as well.
What got me going with eggplants, because at first, your experience with eggplants might be for some folks that, purple blob they sell at the grocery store, and it's kind of bland, a little bitter. It's not really the most enjoyable thing. And before I started growing my eggplants, that was what I knew about them. But then I got Cookstown Orange, which is a different species. So most of the eggplants that we're familiar with are a species domesticated in Asia. But this eggplant was actually Solanum aethiopicum. It's an African eggplant, right? And it's green when you harvest it, and it ripens to orange. A little bit more firm in the flesh, a little easier to work with. And that was the first eggplant that I enjoyed working with in the kitchen. And I said, oh, maybe there's more to eggplants than what I'm used to. Let's expand our horizons. And then we started digging into that diversity, like you're talking about. And there's so many wonderful choices. There's an eggplant for everybody, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna eventually find the one that's for me, that's for sure.
Got to keep looking.
Gotta keep looking, gotta keep on growing and all of that. So, when you're out there and you've been learning about all these different plants and everything, are there any ones that you find difficult to grow? Kind of what our question of this week is. Are there any sort of challenges that you have in the garden?
Oh, yeah. Oh man, I mean, come on, that's what gardening's all about, is challenges.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I'm looking for them. I find so many of them when I'm out there gardening. Um, One of the challenges that we have here at Small House is we have limited space and we have
Yep.
limited sun. So I really have to plan well in advance to
Mhm.
make sure I can utilize my space and light to maximum efficiency, right? And the other problem that I have that goes along with that is I'm a little obsessive about things. And let's say I want to grow eggplants now, suddenly I want to grow all of the eggplants. And I know that I don't
Right.
have the space for that, right? So possibly my greatest issue is self control. I want to start my seeds too early. I want to start too many of them. And then when I transplant them out, I want to put them too close together because I got to fit all these things in there. Right.
Yep.
So at the end of the day, I'm my greatest enemy in the garden. For sure. But if we're going to talk about a crop that challenges me, well, no, we're going to come back to corn. Corn is one that I've struggled with a lot.
Yeah.
Again, because I don't have a lot of space and sun. So
Yeah.
I, what worked for me at the end of the day is I've read the book Buffalo Bird Woman's Garden, which is an
Okay.
incredible book. They sit down with Buffalo Bird Woman, who was a Hidasta native, and they collect a lot of her memories about the way that they grew things and all these things. Um,
Yeah.
Long ago, and they actually drew out her description of how they grew their three sisters garden with the mouse. So now the
Okay.
corn, beans, and squash together, and
Yeah.
they drew out all of her measurements and everything the way that she described it in the book. And so we replicated that. We did a YouTube video about it. To this day, it's our most popular video. We made it a couple years ago, and it's just like clocking in the views all the time.
Mhm.
We sat down and we replicated what she described, and it was the most successful corn I've ever grown, the best bean harvest, and the best squash. All three of those crops outperformed anything we've done historically here. When I learned to get out of my own way and listen to somebody that knew what they were talking about, solved all my problems.
Yeah, let's talk about the Three Sisters method. That is a really popular one out there. You get a lot of questions about that, and I've tried over the years, and succeeded eventually. I think one of my first challenges, though, is timing things right. When it came down to it, I put my beans in probably too early before letting those corn stalks grow up, and boy, you get some pole beans trying to take over your whole corn. They'll pull all that stuff down eventually and everything. So you want some good sturdy stalks already grown as you're getting those beans going, because they'll take off
There's
once they
two
get
tricks
going.
to that.
Yeah.
One, yeah, make sure you get your corn well established before you plant your beans. But what I've encountered through research is that a lot of these traditional Three Sisters combinations use half runner beans as opposed to full on
Okay.
pole beans. So ones that would only actually grow vines that were 3 or 4 foot tall were
Okay.
most commonly used in the Three Sisters combination. So that's an adjustment that we made as well. That I found it really make a big difference, because those beans, especially when the corn comes in and everything, they start to fight for the light. They're fighting
Yeah.
towards that sun, and they will. Those A bean plant will pull a corn down like nobody's business. It's pretty wild. But using a shorter vining plant is going to definitely help curb that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, that was definitely a good idea when it comes to that. One year I had all these would have had all of these great corn stalks like I usually get each year, but this year I ended up with just a wall of beans, and it was quite a sight to see when you kind of get down to it. But
Well, at the end of the day, though, you had a wall of beans, so that's a win.
yeah, yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. I do really love getting some good corn out of my corns that I grow each year too. And similar to you though too as well is that I've got a limited space. I can get plenty of light in certain areas and everything, but making sure that you're able to put enough corn stalks together so that they can pollinate themselves, is a really important thing as well too.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's get moving on to what inspired you after gardening and all of that to start writing. And you've done some really good writing for where I found you for the very first time, found your name anyway, was in Mother Earth News. I read one of your articles, a while back ago, and that's when I started following what you were doing and everything. Um, Plus, you also, again, you've written and done things for Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company, as well as Modern Farmer. And, of course, your books that we are talking about, but what inspired you to become a garden writer?
Well, it was a lady named Sylvia, actually, and I talk about her in that book you got right there from Our Seeds and Their Keepers.
Yeah.
I met Sylvia. She lived down in Kentucky. She was an older lady, and we connected over a corn that her family had grown. And she was really interested in learning more about the history of this corn, and I was more than happy to get in on this too and learn more about it with her. And we were like seed detectives. We hooked up with the University of Kentucky, all these things, and we traced this corn that her family grew way back to like folks in covered wagons. Like we were really able to connect hand to hand, person to person through documentation to trace this corn way back into her family's history, which was super exciting stuff. And we would talk on the phone, Sylvia and I, all the time as as the story was developing. And one day on the phone, Sylvia says to me, she says, Bevin, I'm so thankful that you like to hear these stories about this corn. My family is really not interested in this sort of thing. I try to sit my kids down and talk about corn. They don't care about that. Grandkids have no interest in these old stories. You're the only person that seems to care about this corn. And that hit me, man, hard. That's heavy, right? Because
Yeah.
not only did we talk about this corn, but through these stories, I mean, Sylvia would tell me about her memories as growing up and the way her dad would care for the garden or taking the corn to the mill and having it milled into corn flour. I mean, just so many stories were coming out of this corn. And it hit me that if I didn't save this story, it would be
Yeah.
gone. It would be gone.
Right.
So that's why we started writing that book. And people really enjoyed the book and it kind of took off. And then people said, boy, I wish this book told me how to save my seeds.
Yeah.
These are great stories, but I want to learn more about how to save seeds. And there's a bunch of books out there on how to do that. So there's a bunch of books out there. And they said, no, we want you to teach us how to save these seeds. So then my next book, Saving Our Seeds, came out.
Yeah.
We worked on that. And then Mother Earth News was like, we want to run an excerpt from this book in our magazine. And I was So then we developed that relationship. And just like all things in life, once I learned to get out of my own way, things just kind of snowballed into where we're at now. I got my newest books coming out in a few weeks here.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and it all started with Sylvia and that corn.
Yeah, it's kind of great how those sort of stories and those things that we have that um, where we got started with all of that sort of stuff. You also did a book called The Artisan Herbalist. And what is your most recent book besides the new one that you have coming out?
So the Artisan Herbalist came out in 2021, and that book is about growing and foraging herbs to craft into teas and tinctures and medicinal oils and that sort of thing. Here at Small House, we're lucky. We're across the street from 1,100 acres of forest. So we do a lot of foraging out there for herbs, for medicinals, and for our food, in addition to the herbs and things that we grow here at the farm. So that's kind of what that book is about. And through the book, as we talk about harnessing these herbs, gathering these herbs, and making them into medicinals, we talk about infusing herbs and oils to then make salves and lotions and balms and that sort of thing, which is something that we do here at Small House. We cold press our own seed and nut oils, um, sunflower seeds and hemp seeds and that sort of thing that we then use in the herbal products that we make. And my publisher and I were talking about it after the Artisan Herbalist came out. He says, you kind of reference this idea in the book, but you don't go into depth on it. And I said, well, I would love to, talk about
Mhm.
that more. So the Complete Guide to Seed and Nut Oils was the book that came from that, which is a book that, we've been pressing oil for 10 years now, Enoch. And I
Yeah.
wish that this book existed 10 years ago because there was no literature on the topic when we got started. So it was really hit and miss. So to
Yeah.
be able to take all of my experiences, all of my failures and successes and condense them into a book that we can share with
Yeah.
people so they can learn about this and how easy it is to produce your own healthy seed and nut oils right at home. It's just
Yeah.
really cool to be able to have that opportunity.
That's kind of what it takes sometimes is, some experiences that we have and everything before, like you said, when there's certain subjects that don't have that much information on them. So, well, get out there, learn about it, figure it out, because someone down the line is going to want to take your experiences so that they can figure those sort of things out as well, too. And you found a really good subject there, too, to be able to just really kind of, you know, focus in on some of those things that you've learned and be able to share that with everybody else.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that's really a good thing there too. So also, you mentioned too, and that written and done things for Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. I can maybe do just a little forward promo for our show. Let's Get Growing here too. Is that Jer is going to be one of our guests here coming up in a couple of weeks, and so that's something that everybody
Nice.
can look forward to. I really like Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company. They're one of my favorites as far as, and I'm sure a lot of other gardeners out there as well too love to get into those heirloom seeds and everything when it comes to Baker Creek. How did you get started working and writing for them as well?
So years ago, I mean 2015 or so ish, they had a program called Gardens Across America where they were distributing unique seeds to different folks that were interested in growing them to grow and kind of document how the plants grew and take some pictures or whatever. It was a way to kind of share and preserve seeds, but also kind of a way to market these new varieties that were going to be available in the catalog. And we ended up a part of that program. We grew some incredible beans, the Fagiolo, Angelo, and Piros. These beautiful Italian pole beans is what we grew for them. Not only
Yeah.
beautiful seeds, beautiful beans, super productive. They were winners all the way, right?
Yeah.
So we grew these beans out for Baker Creek and sent them back to them or whatever. And they must have appreciated what we had done, because then they reached out later and asked me to come and speak at the Heirloom Expo that they do
Yeah.
every year in California. So that was kind of how we first connected. And then, they caught wind of, my interest in writing, my interest in preserving seed stories. Our missions
Yeah.
really lined up so much that I have been having the opportunity to research and write some of the seed stories that actually end up in the whole seed catalog, which is pretty awesome. It's
Yes,
the
for
largest
sure.
printed seed catalog ever made, and it's got stories in it that I wrote.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's it, it really is an amazing, like, it's, is what we'll talk about in this interview with Jared too, is about the whole seed catalog. Again, like you said, it's one of the most popular catalogs there are out there. They sell out of them anymore, and it's got to be really something to know that you're a part of that whole project as well too.
It's
And
surreal, dude. It's surreal. One year when we went out to California, they build this iconic squash tower every year,
yeah,
that folks probably that are listening in are very familiar with. And one year I actually got to help build it.
yeah. Oh
And
wow.
once I was standing up on the squash tower, doing a little photo op so folks could take, I was like, I made it.
Yeah.
This is it. There's nowhere else to go from here, right? Um,
Exactly.
I can retire in style now.
It is. It's something really awesome to see is this big giant, like you said, it's like a big old um pyramid, rounded pyramid of all of these different varieties of squash and melons and things, and just really awesome to see. It really kind of takes you back when you walk into the room and you see that thing for sure. And it's one of my favorite things. When I first started doing my whole YouTube channel and all of that, that was my goal at the end of the year of growing and documenting my gardening experience and everything, was to go to the Heirloom Exposition. So I got to go to my first one in 2017. And after that first one, I was totally hooked
Yeah.
and went back again for 2018, went back again for 2019. But then the whole world changed after that. And so we haven't had one of those heirloom expositions for a few years now, and it's going to be really, really exciting to get out and go see one. Finally, this year, they'll have their 10th anniversary of the National Heirloom Exposition, this time in Southern California. So, do you have plans to make it down there for this one?
Yes, I will be there. Ventura, California, I believe is the town outside LA somewhere.
Ventura
Yeah.
County Fairgrounds.
Yep, I will be there, my friend, most certainly. It's a little different vibe in Southern California, than up north, but I'm sure it's going to be a great event just the same.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be something interesting to see. The other location in Santa Rosa, up in Northern California, is really a great place as it is. Brings in a lot of wonderful people, and it's really a cool experience. But like you said, it's going to be different to kind of see what it's like to be outside of such a large city like that, you know. And Los Angeles is a place that I've gotten to make many trips to, and it's one of my favorite places to go when it comes to gardening and talking to different gardeners there. It really is like a garden city, USA. There's so many people who are just interested in that. So again, it'll be really something to see. We definitely look forward to seeing you there at the exposition this year. We'll have to do a on-site interview or something like that for everybody. So
I dig it. I dig it,
yeah,
man, for sure. So make sure everybody that's listening in, put this on your calendars to come to this event, because it is one of the greatest garden experiences you will ever have. It's an incredible time for sure.
yeah, yeah. If you love gardening, have any sort of passion for it at all, it is, like you said, it's like the world exposition type of thing for gardeners. It's the place you want to be, and that's I believe in mid-September coming up here this year too. So definitely check that out and come down there. Maybe you'll get to meet Bevin and myself and a bunch of other just really wonderful gardeners too. So now I want to ask you a little bit too, because this is really, you know, again, as we talked about at the beginning of the interview, is that I got to appear with you on your Seeds and Weeds podcast. So what kind of inspired you to get into the whole podcasting world?
So a couple of different things. One is I don't sit still very well. I have this need to keep busy. So every
Yeah,
winter I find myself starting some sort of new project. One winter it was the YouTube channel.
yeah,
We started that up because I just needed something to do. And so that was kind of what happened with this podcast. I thought I got a little bit of downtime. Let's see what I can do with it. And I thought, I'm always looking for new ways to connect with people, to reach out and just connect with other like-minded people to see what we can do with that, so we can just kind of share our mutual love of plants, really. So I was like, well, let's try this podcast. Let's try just a straight up audio format and see how we can do with that. My other inspiration, I guess you could say, for this was I've been a guest on a lot of podcasts,
yeah.
dozens and dozens of them, it seems, over the years, with the books and all that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And I love it. I love it very much. It's great to have that opportunity to meet new people and to share my ideas and my stories with folks and that sort of thing. But I find that all of them are very long format style interviews, which are difficult for me in particular because I don't sit still very well. Same
Right.
problem, right? So I was like, what if we could take the basic idea of a podcast and distill it down to its bare bones essence and really just try to get to the point with everything as much as we can. And so I was like, let's try that. So that's how Seeds and Weeds podcast came to be. They're 15 to 20-minute episodes. Our longest one so far has been 20 minutes, which is long enough for me to have to sit
Right.
still and do. But when we do interviews, we try to make fun segments. We do like kind of games, garden related games with people, trivia questions. It's a lot like this show in a way where you have the different segments, so we can
Yeah.
kind of keep up with the more modern short attention span, for sure. And when we do straight up interviews, I call it 5 questions and I ask 5 questions. That's it. I
Yeah.
took the 20 something interviews that I've been on the other side of the microphone and distilled it down to the 5 essential questions. And those are the questions I ask the guests that we have. And it's been great. We've had,
Right.
superstar, right? And we've had, farmers and gardeners and herbalists and foragers and just all sorts of groovy plant people that come on the show, talk about why they love plants, what they're doing in their communities to help other people love plants. And then that's it, and it's a bi-weekly show right now. We're dropping them every 2 weeks. It's been a
Well,
blast. It's so much fun.
oh yeah, I've been really enjoying this show here too, and our whole opportunity we have of getting to talk to all the different gardeners from whether, like I said, the smaller channel gardeners on YouTube, our Instagram gardeners. There's so many great people I follow there too. So, and then of course, there's just some really great people like yourself who, it just makes for a really good interview to kind of set the whole stage for the whole show and everything. Um, who are some of the people that you've got coming up or you've had on the show?
Well, we had John Jackson on the show recently, who runs Comfort Farms down in Georgia. Real interesting character for sure. So Comfort Farms is sort of a farm-based rehabilitation center for veterans. So they bring these folks in that, have recently come back from serving in the military, who are trying to adjust to civilian life, and he helps them through work on the farm. It's really, really fascinating stuff. John's quite a storyteller too, so it was great to have him on the show. We recently had Mel Mutterspa on the show. She's an herbalist. She runs a company called the Herbalist Path. So she came on the show to talk about a new program that they're offering there through her business, mother-daughter type herbalism wellness seminar type of thing. It was pretty cool. She's a really interesting lady. We had her, much like how you came on the show to answer people's gardening questions. She came on the show for a segment we called Ask an Herbalist, where people send in questions about herbs and medicine and sort of stuff. That was really good. We got coming up next, we're going to have Mike and Erica, which are personal friends of mine, that own Nature and Nurture Seeds here in Michigan. It's a small heirloom seed company, and they grow the seeds that they offer. Really, really cool couple, really, really great seeds. So we're going to have them on the show. We're going to do kind of a gardening dating game style question game with them. I thought that would be fun. Yeah. I got to mix it up, keep it entertaining, not only for our listeners, but also for myself. I got to keep it fresh, I guess. But we just had all sorts of great folks. It's really interesting to start the podcast. Of course, I reached out to folks that I know, like yourself. It was like, hey, you want to come and do this thing? I'd love to have you. And now that the show is kind of catching on, folks are starting to reach out to me, interested to being on the program. So the sky's the limit. It seems like lots of people want to check out the show. Lots of people want to be on it. So I'm just excited to see what the next year is going to be. Again, I wish I kind of would have started it sooner, because it's so much fun. I've been just having a great time with it.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I came up with this whole concept for the Let's Get Growing show a couple of years ago. And it was when I found the StreamYard platform we use here. And I was like, man, how could we really kind of make something that's just a little bit unique to the gardening community, and to be able to provide really cool gardening stories and get to interview some of the really awesome people out in the gardening community that I've gotten to know or I follow and all of that. And it's been really, again, like you're saying, just a really wonderful experience to process the show and do all the things that we're doing here, and to be able to put it together for everybody. And again, it's just I wish I'd gotten into it a couple of years ago when I first started it, because it's been so much fun so far over these last few weeks. So I'm really looking forward to where it goes to in the future, and all of the other really great people we get to bring onto our show as well. So let's see. I think we've got a couple of questions here from the audience. We'll throw those at you here real quick.
All right, here we go.
We've got Jay Dixon for Bevin. I noticed that you have grown your business into value-added products, consultations, and seed products. How did you grow into those areas?
That's a good question. Well, would it cheat if I just said organically? We grew into them organically. Things just kind of come to be, So when we started Small House Farm in 2014, one of the first things that we did was start cold pressing oil, right? That was something that I was just really interested in trying. And so I'm pressing all this oil at home, and I have no gauge for quality. I don't really even know what I'm doing at this point. And there was a lady in the town nearby me that had one of those olive oil stores where they, repackage olive oil and vinegar and sell it or whatever. So she was my point of reference for oil. So I took some of the sunflower oil that I had pressed into her store, and I said, look what I did. And she's, this is great. You could sell this. This could be a business, all these things, and I'm not interested in business. I'm trying to, like I said, not work and just garden. But, at the end of the day, how it works. So I was like, okay, well, maybe we could try setting up at the farmer's market. So we got a booth at the farmer's market, and I pressed and pressed, it was a little hand cranked oil press, press and press my oil all week. And I brought my little bottles of sunflower oil to the market and sold out in 15 minutes. And people cleaned me out. It was amazing. And I thought, well, press it again next week. Same thing. As fast as I could press the oil, people were buying it. And I thought, well, maybe we do have some sort of a business model here. Well, at the same time, while this is happening, I've been studying the uses of plants for most of my life, and, working with herbs to craft these different medicines and stuff. So we started using the oils and then bringing these herbal products with me to market too, mostly just to kind of bulk up my offerings. So I wouldn't sell out of oil so fast was kind of my goal. But then I had the same problem. problem, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Selling out. People were responding so well to these handcrafted, locally made goods, that I thought, well, maybe we should pursue this as a line of employment, as something more than just a hobby. And that slowly started to take off. And then while that was happening, inevitably, while you're at the farmer's market, people want to come and ask you questions. Oh, well, do you have an herb you'd recommend for this? Or, oh, I've been trying to grow this and that, and I can't seem to get it to work. Do you have any advice? So I thought, well, maybe we should have a little workshop and see if people want to come to a workshop and see.
Yeah.
And we sold it out. We packed the place,
Awesome.
and people, yeah. And it was just like, okay, well, maybe we need to try that another time. And I don't know. They just kept rolling. I would like to sit here, Nick, and tell you that this was all part of a grand design, that I had a master plan coming into what we're doing, but I really don't.
Yeah.
It just kind of came to be selling seeds because, well, hey, I like growing these herbs that you just taught me how to grow. Do you got any seeds for them?
Right.
Sure, I guess I do. Let's try to produce more seeds. And now here we are, where it's a full-time gig. My
Yeah.
wife and I run all of Small House Farm. The kids come and help as much as that they can with what we're doing. And this is what we do for a job now: is grow and sell herbs and seeds and teach people how to garden. And I write books. I spend my next book comes out April 4th, and from April 4th until the first day of summer vacation, which is something in June, I have 33 workshops that I'm giving
Oh,
all over
wow.
the place. Yeah, I travel all over the country now to talk to people about the benefits of locally grown food and medicine. And, again, there was no plan to it. It was just
Yeah.
getting out of my own way, I guess, right?
I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, what a killer gig to have, right?
It could be worse. I've had worse jobs for sure. There's days,
Right.
man, where I'll like look up, I'm out in the middle of the woods gathering leaves, and I'm like, this is my day at work, like
Yeah.
not bad, and I'll
Not
paint it
bad
with a
at all.
very rose-colored brush because to make it sound wonderful. But as we all know, as entrepreneurs and freelancers, there's a lot of stress and a lot of work going on behind the scenes for sure. It's not as
Yeah.
beautiful as I might make it sound,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's pretty beautiful all the same. So we got to count our
Yeah.
blessings, right?
Yeah, everything has gone so well for us over our first 4 shows we've done already so far, but that is one of those behind the scene things that people don't see is how we're clamoring. In fact, I think we got started a minute late today because we were just trying to get a couple of things that came up last minute, and just trying to throw things together. Yeah, so there's a ton of stress that comes along with it, but the cool thing is that we're gardening and we're gardeners, and so we have a great opportunity to de-stress later on.
A lifetime ago, I used to organize a music festival, pre-gardening days,
Yeah.
and it was just like that, where the show itself is incredible. People are having a great time, but backstage, it's utter chaos the whole time. People are
Yeah.
running and screaming and pulling their hair out, and things are falling apart. But up on the stage, it looks beautiful for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's how you know you're doing a good job, right?
Yep, that's really kind of funny too, because I didn't know that about you as well too, is that I actually dabbled in a little bit of music production and concert production back in college. And it's the same thing. I just remember that whole, being the producer, being the person who's in charge of making sure everything goes the way it's supposed to go that was probably one of the most stressful things I ever did. But yet, it was really great. Again, similar to with this show and everything, is to see the final outcome and to be a part of all of that is just awesome. So it kind of makes it worth the stress in the long run. But yeah, I remember those days. That was some fun.
For sure, man. And I got to tell you right here, you're doing a great job with the show. I've watched every episode. It's
Oh,
it's
thank you.
fantastic. You guys are doing a wonderful job for sure.
Awesome. That's really awesome to hear too. And yeah, again, when you're getting that feedback from everybody as well too about what you're doing, it's just a really makes a lot of things worth it as well too. So it looks like we still got another question or so here. Let's check out what is our next question from LP. What tips do you have for other gardeners with limited sun who want to grow everything?
All right, that's a good question. That's a question we're all facing, isn't it?
Yep.
So I got a few answers. One is sometimes you got to make some hard choices. Just like how I used to grow corn and I've had to cut corn out of my lineup because it just wasn't going to work for me. And sometimes you just have to face the facts that you're not going to be able to do everything. You want to grow everything? I want to
Right.
grow everything, but I just know that that's not necessarily realistic.
Yeah.
But we could certainly push those boundaries, right?
That's
And we
right.
could try to grow as many things as possible for sure. Looking into, plants that will grow well in partial sun is something that we do a lot of here. And I find that with some crops, I feel as if I can extend their harvest even by doing that. Spinach and lettuce, those are crops that prefer cooler weathers, right? They like
Hmm.
cooler weather. And when it gets hot and sunny, they're going to bolt. They're not going to be good anymore. But I grow them practically in the shade, right? Well
Yeah.
mulched and well watered, keeping those root systems moist, keeping the roots cool is the most important thing. Top of the plant, it can suck in the heat. That's fine. It's the roots that are going to make the decisions for these plants. So if we can keep that root system cool, we can extend their life a little bit longer. Cilantro.
Yeah.
Cilantro is an herb people can tell you, oh, grow it in the full sun. Well, sure, you can, but it's going to bolt right away and that sort of thing. And
Yes,
you're
it
going to have to
will.
plant cilantro every couple of days just to keep it going. I grow it in the shade. It might get a little lanky, but I'm going to have it for significantly longer, right? So just
Yep.
learning to kind of understand how these plants are doing their thing, what kind of boundaries we can sort of push with them, move them a little bit into the shade as we go. And you'll find that there's a lot of plants that will do just all right. They'll do fine with less sun than they're recommended to get, so you can kind of push
Yeah.
those things. In addition to that, sometimes I'll grow stuff in pots just so I can move the pots around in the sun.
Yeah.
Um, Here at Small House, what my sunniest area is the big wraparound deck that we have in our house, right?
Okay.
And I'm not going to get rid of the deck because everyone likes to sit on it, but that's where most of my sun is. So I grow a lot of things in containers, even though I've got plenty of in-ground gardening. I've got raised beds all over the place. I'm still growing stuff in containers just so I can maximize that sun.
Yeah.
Before we lived here, I lived in a house in town. It had a really long driveway, and it was the only place that we got any sun on like half the driveway. So I'd grow my tomatoes in pots, and then I'd come back out halfway through the day and move all the pots to the other side of the driveway
Yes.
just so I could keep them in the sun.
Yeah,
So
that's one of
there,
those big advantages of doing small space container gardening too. It's one of those things. You might not have the limited space, or again, in some cases, you might actually have it. But containers are so awesome because of that ability to just move them around and to make sure that they're getting all of the sun and everything that they need.
absolutely. So having a good plan is the key. Making a list of what do you really want to grow, what are your have tos, what are your possible things you can cut. Making a realistic list of what you're gonna want to grow, and then I like to diagram the garden. I'll get graph paper,
Yeah.
because I can use that kind of as a measurement, and I will diagram out all of my garden plans to really kind of, it's almost like a Venn diagram of what do I want to grow and what do I actually have space for, and where that overlaps, that's my garden plan.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. All such really good stuff there. Which kind of maybe there's just a little bit more too, but usually my last question is if you have any advice or tips or anything like that for newer gardeners.
Yeah. So of course, start small, right? That's good advice.
There you go.
Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't try to do too many things at one time, especially if you're
Yep.
just learning, because you're probably gonna make a mistake somewhere, and which is okay.
Yeah.
But if you make a whole bunch of mistakes, you could get frustrated. You overwhelm
Mhm.
yourself, you're going to get frustrated. And that really what we're trying to do is have fun out in that garden. You want to get out there, you want to have a good time. All that delicious food that you're going to grow is almost like a side effect of having fun in the garden. So get
Yep.
out there, have a good time. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Making
Yes.
mistakes is totally human nature. We're all going to do it. I've been
I
gardening
still make
forever.
plenty.
Oh yeah, man. So on the podcast, one of the 5 questions that I always ask folks is, what was a recent garden failure and what was the lesson that you learned from that? That's the question I ask.
Yeah,
And every person's like, oh, that's a long list. I can't believe I only have to pick one. Because even the
that's
most
right.
experienced growers, we're messing things up all the time.
Yep,
So
yep.
just be prepared to make mistakes and learn how to roll with it.
Exactly. And that's a big thing though too, is don't get discouraged. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to gardening. There's so many aspects of it. Again, as you talked about, whether you're gardening in a shadier area or a more sunnier area. If you have containers or in ground, or pests are another big challenge for people and all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And it's one of the things I always tell people when I'm talking online or giving advice and everything, is to not get discouraged, because those things are going to happen. You're going to find the challenges, you're going to find mistakes or things that don't grow as well, and to just keep going at it. It's one of the things I like to refer to gardening as similar to baseball or other sports, is that you might not have the greatest season this season, but there's always next season.
Oh, I like that.
Learn and take some of the things that you figured out, similar to what you talk about though too with diagramming and everything. I talk about garden journaling. Write some of this stuff down so that you can remember it next year, so that you can not make the same mistake, or work on those sort of challenges that you're facing and all of that too. Those are all really good things to do for newer gardeners, because I want to see as many gardeners succeed out there as possible, because gardening, again, is one of those just really wonderful experiences where, not only do we get, like you said, the food and the things that are the outcomes of our garden as as a side effect, in a sense, we also get that garden therapy. There's
Yes.
nothing better than to de-stress from the crazy world or your crazy job, or things going on with the family, all that sort of stuff, than to be able to step out into a garden and just be able to work in the soil. It's just an amazing experience.
My happiest moment of every day is I'll wake up, I'll pour a cup of coffee, and I'll just walk around in the garden. Right. It's just when things are just starting to wake up, the sun's coming up, the birds are starting to sing you some
Yep.
songs, and it's just so
Yep.
peaceful. Oh, it's the greatest thing. Everything else just melts away. Nothing else even exists anymore. It's just that beauty of the garden. It's the greatest thing. Like you're saying, I mean, never be afraid of making mistakes. You're going to learn stuff every time. So I'll do seminars for master gardeners, Enoch. And at the end of the
Yeah.
talk, how many of them raise their hands to ask questions? And these folks in my garden, they're master gardeners. They've been doing it their whole lives, and they're still learning new stuff.
Yep.
We do this our whole, we're going to keep learning things. So if you're brand new to it, well, you got a wonderful world ahead of you of learning coming up. So just, buckle up and
Yeah.
take the ride. And it's the most fun that you're going to have.
Yes, exactly. I kind of say that, if you're not continually learning things in the garden, then are you really gardening?
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so awesome again to have you here with us, Bevin. It's been such a great conversation. I've been looking forward to this interview for weeks now. And again, thanks for taking your time out today to join with us here on the Let's Get Growing live cast.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute blast. Such a pleasure. Thank you to everyone that helps put the show together. Everybody's been watching. Enoch, man, you're the man. Thank you so much for having me out today.
Awesome. Again, yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you here real soon.
Sounds good.